And the one thing that I realize is that insight absolutely and fundamentally drives our world forward. No business is exclusive to that. The jobs that you all do are essential for every modern business and for government and for life as a whole. In fact, data is growing so exponentially at the moment. By 2025, we're going to have 163 zettabytes of data per year being generated. That's a billion high-definition movies. It's so much data that we're only really going to be able to capture and use about 0.5% of that. But that 0.5% is going to unlock a huge amount of value. But for me and my job, it has to come back to who we are. We're human. And I look back as much as I look forward, and really I want to ground us in some history to start things off. It started with storytelling, sitting around a campfire 6,000 years ago in these new settlements. The narratives transferred the knowledge of who we were, what we learned, medicines, inventions, building things, fixing things. It's our history and our knowledge, and it was passed down from generation to generation. And really, humanity's progression has been defined by great thinkers. The truth has been shown to us by data all the way through thousands of years. And it's not always been easily or readily accepted. The first person that I want to talk about, and I always go back to about the 12th century, 1206 to be precise. This guy called Al-Jazari, who's known as the Dreamer. He wrote a book called The Book of Knowledge of Ingenious Mechanical Devices. 100 machines that inspired and created wonder in people about what a clock could look like, what a water transference device could look like, what a robot could look like. In the 12th century, we often forget that the Arabian Muslim scholars came up with incredible things years and years ago, hundreds of years ago. He viewed the world through data. He applied it in new ways. He broke ground. There are very few copies of his book left. I think the youngest copy of his book that's in existence is about 500 years old. That's amazing to me. That actually encoding that data in pages and passing that down through the generations has enabled people to learn his story all the way through and apply, some of his lessons. And the next person I like to refer to is Galileo. He was a man that was dealing in science in the face of disbelief. Einstein called him the father of modern science. And really, he applied science and technology, he collected data, he looked to the stars, and he tried to really see how the world truly is. And he got into a huge amount of problems with this. He was looking at the principle of relativity, velocity, free fall, gravity, inertia. Things that are pretty normal today when we think about physics and we think about how our world works. Well, he came up with heliocentrism, right? The idea that we're actually spherical on this planet. And the Roman Inquisition threw him in jail for the remainder of his life because they said, yeah, but if you look far out, the stars don't seem to be moving like this. We don't believe you. We don't believe your data. He spent his life under house arrest for a belief. Eventually he was forgiven. Eventually we saw people like Stephen Hawking really giving him the dues that he deserves. But how many times have you been at work and you've presented data to someone and they're like, I just don't believe it, and they walk away? How many? How many people, right? Look again. Okay, 2 days later. Several $1,000s spent on resources. Here we go. It's the same answer. I don't believe it still. I'm just going to do it. You get it, right? But the rigor is coming from people like us. It's coming from software platforms. It's coming from the data itself. It's coming from the wisdom that we push out into the world, from the experience that we have. And really, some of this data that we present just isn't good sometimes, and we have to fix it, we have to go back, we have to be honest about that. And it reminded me, when I was down in Washington, D.C. about 6 weeks ago, I went to the Air and Space Museum, and I saw the Wright Flyer, a model of the Wright Flyer. that flew on December the 17th, 1903 for the first time. Changed everything. How many people flew here to Vegas, right? Pretty much everyone in the room. Well, what's interesting about the Wright brothers is that they were data pioneers. And when I was there, I was thinking, I need to tell this story. They were taking all these theories and this data about how you can take a heavier-than-air aircraft, a wing, off the ground. And everyone that had gone before them was wrong. And the amount of crashes that they had, like, numbered into the dozens, into the hundreds. Until they went home and they built a homemade wind tunnel. It was quite small, but they collected enough data and they built enough prototypes to work out how they could fly. They knew that data was wrong, but they didn't question it by saying that's wrong, we're going to ignore it, and then we're going to fundamentally go the opposite direction, we're not ever going to be able to fly. It's like we're going to divine what true data in this context is. So data's always changing, and it's really interesting. And obviously earlier on we saw a lot around space and data and computing, and people of great talent have taken us into space. And 50 years ago they took us to the moon, right? So Collins and Aldrin and Armstrong, they headed for the moon. And what's really interesting about this is that a great friend of mine got inspired by NASA and the work they did by the moon landings. And on the right-hand side here, we've got a website. And this is apolloinrealtime.org. And he actually called this no narrative storytelling. He did this as a hobby. So he was at home, he collected all this data, he built it for Apollo 17. And after about 6 years, he got a phone call, and it was from NASA. And they said, "We really love your website. Can you tell us about it?" He said, "It's no narrative storytelling. I take all the data that I can get about a moon mission, and I present it in a way that lets you look for what you want to find." The idea of show don't tell was transferred through this website. What's really interesting about this as well is that it truly empowered the audience to tell their own story as part of the bigger story based on real data. 11,000 hours of audio was encoded for the new version for Apollo 11. And when they actually released that to the world, they crashed all the servers, and people watched it from end to end, the entire mission as it played out before, but really discovering lots of different parts of the story in the data. That universe of data to them was infinite in a way. They could tell multiple stories. It was fascinating. And if you empower the audience and you give them credit to empower that sort of curiosity, then I think we can find great things in business today. And that's led us to where we are today. We're moving faster than we ever done before. We've gone through industrial revolutions where energy, transportation, communications, innovations have pushed us forward in the last 250 years. Our mastery of data over that 250 years has created trillion-dollar companies today. It's absolutely amazing. And today, the fourth industrial revolution is cyber-connected systems. The internet, connecting everything, sensors, cameras, self-driving cars in the future, devices. We live in an incredible world that's accelerating faster every single day, and we can look to what we see around us, the signals of change, to show us how that life is changing and how culturally we're being shaped and how our culture is also shaping the technology. And I think that there's four things that I'm super excited about. And I talk about dozens of things in the period of a year to tens of thousands of people. But the four things that I think are really exciting me today and will cause a huge growth in data and provide great tools for what you need to do. The first one's mobile. By next year, there's going to be 6 billion smartphones in the world. What's fascinating about that stat is that that's more people with access to mobile communications than access to clean running water. What's more important in life? You can start a business, you can call in a favor, you can transfer money. Revolutions in places like Africa, right? They were doing mobile banking 16 years ago in Kenya, right? We're still struggling a little bit today, right? And then the second thing is a new mobile reality. Augmented reality, the idea that we can wear glasses on our faces And all the big companies are spending billions of dollars researching this and working out how to make this work. Data delivered by the terabyte in context, so you can really create an overlay to the world. Some people are calling it the mirrorverse, right? It's this alternate universe where we're actually a part of it, very different from virtual reality, which is a completely separate world. Augmented reality, where we see the data, it's delivered to our eyes immediately when we need it the most, and we're still working that out. It's very difficult to work out how far we go with this. Too much data, and it'll be rendered useless. Just enough data, and it will power the next 1,000 years of progress. And then we've heard nothing but thousands of articles and conference presentations and futurists running around promising the future delivered by artificial intelligence. In 1993, I sat down an old Macintosh, and I programmed a single-layer neural network to try and work out whether grammar truly existed or not. I was that kind of precocious student, right? And I said, well, maybe it doesn't. It just didn't work very well. And I was like, maybe grammar doesn't exist because it only works 60% of the time, and that's not particularly good with AI. But like today, some 25, 26 years later, we're now in a world where artificial intelligence is going to be in every single device in the world. It's going to fundamentally change things as exponentially as electricity changes things. There's hidden secrets in our data. Machine learning, when applied correctly, will divine some of those insights that completely inform whole new ways of working in the world. Tapping deeply into data is something we always strive to do. And it's hard work, even with tools like artificial intelligence doing that. But then there's also quantum computing as well. I mean, Google just the other week said, we've just hit quantum supremacy. We solved a hugely difficult problem, and in 200 seconds it would take a traditional computer 10,000 years. To which the traditional computer scientists were like, prove it. It's like, you can't run a computer for 10,000 years. Anyway, hugely controversial. Quantum physics, everything acts differently at the quantum level. But it's a new tool in our arsenal to gather new insights. It's going to break ground in problem solving, in encryption, and in chemistry. In fact, I've got a lot of people that I know that are working on this to really help secure the new world of banking and other applications as well. I'm so excited. These 4 pieces of technology, if you look at anything from this point forward, just go and Google and take a look at these 4 areas. You'll be fascinated at the experiments that are being undertaken day by day. But with all this data and with all of these devices and these new ways of working, we've really got to come back to who we are as humans. We deserve to have a place in this world, and we can't get replaced by technology, right? We have to recognize that there's truth, much like Galileo put out there, and he was ignored. We have to stand by that truth more now than ever before. We have to realize that there's bias in the data. And sometimes that's because, people of minority, different genders and whatever aren't represented in the way that we train data sets or the way that we build databases or, entity relationship models, anything. So we have to look at bias. We have to look at fixing some of that. I actually think the new data cleansing is going to be bias cleansing. And really, there's digital rights as well. So I support a foundation called the Electronic Frontier Foundation. They truly believe that digital rights are human rights. We're completely put together, digital and humanity. We are together forever now. We're symbiotic in the way that we operate in the world. And there's lots of people experimenting with new ways to give humanity back what it deserves. The Office of the Chief Technology Information Officer down in Microsoft is looking at projects into what they're calling data dignity. Microtransactions, so if they collect data on you, you give them permission to use it or sell it, and then you get a cut of that money back, or you don't give them permission, and you're in control. Is that going to be the new model of the world? Well, I certainly hope so. Is it likely to become the new model of the world quickly? No, because we don't like change. But change is inevitable. We either change or change happens to us. And new companies will surround the old companies and change the business model. It's very exciting, the disruption that we're going to see. But really, what we have to do with all the data and devices and different perspectives is understand something that Marshall McLuhan said very eloquently. A point of view can be a dangerous luxury when substituted for insight and understanding. Do we truly understand what we're pushing out into the world, what we deliver? Are we making time to understand that? Data alone without understanding is nothing. We're driven to think, feel, and do by the information presented to us. When it becomes insights, we use that, we mix that with our experience, and that becomes wisdom. And I like to say that we live in the wisdom economy. And when you see things like artificial intelligence come in, they're like, well, that's going to replace all these jobs and whatever. I just say, no, it allows humanity to level up. No one needs to be flipping burgers or even driving taxis. And it's like, yeah, but we need these people. No, we need to elevate these people into new professions. There's an interesting stat. I live up in Canada. I live in Toronto. In Canada, there's about 200 taxi drivers that are fully qualified medical doctors in other countries, and 20 of them are surgeons, and they're taxi drivers. Where's the problem in the world? The problem in the world is that we haven't used data and applied it to platforms and new ways of working to liberate them into something where they can be incredibly powerful citizens of Canada, US, and beyond. I mean, we are the Homo sapiens. We're the wise people, right? Our ability to reason and speak and to think about wisdom that we gather is incredibly important. And it's what drives all businesses. We're not here because we just push data from A to B. We're here because we know exactly what that data is going to do at the other end. And that brings me to think about transformation. Now, I've run dozens of transformation projects, hundreds of millions of dollars, saving money, making money, empowering executives, confusing a lot of executives as well. And in the work, we have to transform our businesses, and in turn, we transform the world. I think we often forget that we're all world leaders. I say that I train world leaders to have impact. We're all world leaders. It doesn't just have to be the people in charge of countries. We're the people that have the power to make a change every single day. But how fast are we moving? Now, there's a guy called Roy Amara. He's a futurist, an amazing thinker. He applied foresight principles and started to help companies look forward. He helped found the Institute for the Future down in California. And he came up with Amara's law. He said this: we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short term and underestimate the effect of technology in the long term. So when I was talking about the four things, and I'm super excited, there's probably a bunch of people in the room going, it's not going to happen that quickly. But 30 years ago, we said that about mobile phones. And we're saying it today about self-driving cars, and we're saying it today about AI. We think that we're overestimating everything, and then suddenly, 10, 15 years' time, it's going to be here faster than we've ever seen it before. So when I really work with people, I say, think big today. Write stories. Create incredible worlds. Not everyone's going to hit home, but within that, within those signals of change, we're going to see a complete redefinition of our world. As we gather data and we build huge data infrastructure, and it's difficult to do, and the tools like AT&T and other vendors really come together to make our jobs a lot easier than they used to be. I hate spreadsheets, by the way. I spent a lot of time in spreadsheets. But I was looking around, and it's like, who's saying something really smart about this? And there's a guy called Atul Butt. He's a professor at University of California. He works with the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation as well. He said, hiding within these mounds of data is knowledge. And that could change your life or change the world. And do you know what? I think that there's something very profound in there. Even if you make a decision today that changes a dozen people's lives, that's not a failure. We can't impact 1 billion people's lives immediately. It takes time. It takes wisdom. And that's built from everyone in this room speaking to each other here, taking it back to work. those businesses putting goodness out into the world and the world delivering goodness back into them. And people believing that humanity at the center of solutions can deliver huge change. And technology's there and data's there, sure. And we're the people to help it deliver.